We'll call the Housing Trust to order for this evening. The first agenda item is the approval of minutes of May 31st, 2022.
And move their approval.
Second.
Any discussion, changes? And we will put them on file. The next
Aye.
one,
Do we vote?
you can vote. Do you feel better about
We have
it?
to because we're virtual.
The answer is Robert's rules does not require that you vote the minutes. If
Oh,
there are no
okay.
changes.
Oh,
That's
wow.
a technicality, but I happen to
Technicality.
know it. So if I can avoid a roll call vote. I'll
That's
do that.
fine.
But we have everybody
Yes,
here who's
Madam
on the
Chair.
committee, right? Yeah. All right, they're approved. Status of the Housing Trust Fund and affordable housing resales.
Karen.
So the, on the Housing Trust Fund, the total amount at this point is $28,349.54. That includes interest payments. There's another $15,221 that involve resale fees, and I'll get into that a little bit. 5,243 from the resale of a High Rock condo at 258 Linden Street, which we just received. And there will be another 9,478 from the resale of a High Rock condo at 120 Fairview Road. I should mention that given all the changes, Needham Housing Authority, we have been really designated as the monitoring agent for refinancing or any resales on their High Rock condos. We recently had 3 resales, which is incredibly unusual. I mean, we typically maybe have of all the 40B units, ownership units that the town's involved as monitoring agent, as well as the NHA, the High Rock condos. It's one every other year. So it's been a lot of extra heavy lifting. One resale was at 33 Murphy Road and involved the sale of the sellers to the seller's grandson and wife. Because they were income eligible, we were able to move ahead with that sale without having to do a marketing process and lottery. We work with Mass Housing closely on all of these transactions. And then on a 258 Linden Street, which was a unit targeted for 50% of area median income, we received almost 30 applications. This is really unusual. I mean, it is so much more than what typically happens. Even Mass Housing was very surprised, which 22 were eligible to participate in the lottery. There was a very formidable outreach process, and the results showed once the winners were designated, they wanted to close within a month because they wanted to lock in the rate. So we really moved quickly to pull all the extra documentations and approvals in place, and they closed at the November 28th. The third one is I think people call it workforce housing. It's a unit at 120 Fairview Road that is targeted to 110% of area median income, which is about translates into purchase price about $474,000. We received 6 applications. One backed out, another one was over income, and we had 4 people participating in the lottery. And the first winners basically said they declined the unit because they had other options. They got won another lottery in Norwood. I mean, it's just like crazy stuff. And so they declined the units. So the second ranking lottery participants are thrilled and they're moving ahead. And it's a very, it's sad when there's not a home for everybody who participates in lottery, but it is gratifying to see people go through what's really a life-changing kind of event. So that has been a big level of effort. And in addition, as many of you know, there's one affordable unit at Hamilton Highlands. It was Webster Green Development. And that unit is turning over because the occupant of the affordable unit is moving into an assisted living situation. So we're going through the previous lottery ranking. The first person we contacted decided she did not want the affordable rent. Go figure. It would have saved her about $400, but she declined. So we're now sent a letter to the last ranking lottery participant. If that person, it turns out, is not eligible or does not want to move forward, then we're going to have to do another kind of application period in a lottery for that particular affordable unit. And I should mention on Hamilton Highlands, they have yet another property manager. This one seems to be more responsive. But it has been very difficult in dealing with monitoring with this particular affordable unit in the past. So that kind of, in a nutshell, what's happening on that agenda item.
So Karen will be finishing this. Well, we'll be halfway through the year at about $43,000 in that account, is what you're saying? There's another 15.
Yeah, whatever 15 and 28. Whatever those numbers are, yeah. So it's still a small pot of money, but it's increasing.
It's increasing. We're getting there, right? All right. The next, any questions?
Yeah, I just had one. So you had made a comment about previous lottery winners. I was just curious, and forgive me if this has come up before and I'm just forgetting. So if there's a new house that comes on or new property that comes on, are previous lottery applicants given any kind of preference, or is this just really each individual, because the units are different sizes and things like that, is each individual unit assigned its own sort of independent lottery process?
That's a good question. When it comes to the home ownership units that we were talking about, any kind of previous lottery list becomes stale after a couple years. So really need to do another kind of outreach process. However, we notified everybody on our notification list, which is hundreds, and we notified all those people who qualified for the lottery in the past, so they had a shot. The 110% AMI unit was a little different because most of the people who were interested in affordable housing, it was really outside of their budgets per se. So we did our best to kind of get the word out, to various organizations, MLS, that type of thing.
Great. Thank you.
Karen, thank you for that. Just two things. One's more of a comment on, I've built affordable housing both for rent and for sale. I've had the discussion with Representative Garlick and actually Congressman Auchincloss about how difficult it is. And this sounds typical of what I've dealt with in other developers as well, is you have these units, but then when you have a lottery, I think the one I had like 23 people in them, they drop off or they don't qualify, or they have to get a statement from 2 years ago showing the $7 dividend that they got, the year before. It's just a mountain of paperwork. And sometimes it's for an elder person and have the grandchild fill it out and then end up kind of giving up on the process. Or like you said, it gets stale. It's just, there's nothing we can do about this. I just know as we talk about getting affordable housing online, we really just have to press people that have control over the process to somehow streamline it or be a little more forgiving with the application. So that's just my comment. My question is on that kind of non-arm's length transaction with the relative. Is that our policy, or is that something that it just seems when one comes on, they are getting the benefit of something that's under market. Maybe it should, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't right now, but maybe it should go back out to the public, especially with all this demand. So is that our policy or is that a policy of the state?
It seemed like a really nice thing, as long as the buyers were eligible, and they were, and Mass Housing was totally on board with it. We didn't have to go through the whole outreach process and marketing, and it seemed like a nice thing. It's certainly not a policy. It was quite frankly a godsend, since we had 2 other resales going on, and all of that effort just have to go through one buyer, but
Okay, I
we
think
just
something I'd
made,
just like
we
to
made a
think
pragmatic
about.
decision, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, thank you. I'm wondering, you said that you have had much more activity and it sounded like 30 applicants is a lot. I'm wondering, is that indicative of more need given like the economy, or is that maybe more publication? I myself have noticed them going out in the newsletter, and I'm wondering if that's something we can expect for the future. Do we need, to Matt's point, there's a lot of work. Do we need to do something to make sure that we're able to handle the potential growth in this vetting process?
Well, I'd say, it's rare to have so many at the same time. And once buyers get into these units, they're like gold. I mean, so they only move if there is a very compelling reason. That's why we don't see them turn over very much. And the town doesn't have many of these units anyway. I think though, on your first question, it's a combination of both. I think there's a combination of people really, looking for opportunities to have a first-time home ownership opportunity, and paying attention to what's to notifications, etc. And the outreach. I mean, Cindy was very helpful with outreach, and the seller's real estate agent also played a significant role in outreach, and we really did a pretty major blitz, and I think that showed in the results.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just an observation, if I might. It just sounds weird to hear 100% AM, 110% AMI in calling affordable housing.
The Community Preservation Committee actually funded that at town
Yeah.
meeting. That was something
No,
that
it's not to complain. I'm just thinking of
Yeah.
the situation.
was
It's like-
one of the things that, do you remember that?
So you will remember AMI includes Boston.
Okay.
So it's a broad catchment area.
Right.
But
Usually we're talking 80% AMI, right?
Right, and
Right.
there was money put into this unit to buy it up to 110,
Okay.
potentially at town meeting.
Okay.
all right. The next item is our subsidized housing inventory, which I don't think got sent out, but I think we were looking just for the updated summary for this year to understand where it stood relative to the new census numbers, et cetera, based on our discussion last time.
Yeah, the number is the number is 1,410 SHI units, which based on the 2020 census figures gets us to 11.86%. I should say that because of the litigation involving 1180 Great Plain Avenue, those 16 units were removed to zero, awaiting when we have the building permits. Now we have the building permits, so it's just a matter of the documentation to DHCD to restore those units and get back to that 1,410 units. So that's the only change.
Okay. Any other questions from people on that? All right. The small repair grant program.
Karen, if I could just pass this out. We don't have a lot of time tonight to talk about changes in eligibility, but there have been questions at the last meeting about if we had waiting lists and who was being knocked out of eligibility because of the 2% asset requirement. So this is just informational, kind of for a proposal for next meeting. But I think for this meeting, given our time frame, if we could you just speak to FY24 budget request for the group's consideration?
Are you talking to me?
No, Lee.
Lee,
Oh, yes. So for fiscal 2024, we're looking for another allocation of $50,000 to fund the small repair grant program. I think if you remember, we've actually funded this 3 other times in the past in 2020, 2022, 2023. And so to date, we've actually allocated a total of appropriated $150,000 toward the small repair grant program. And as of today, over these 3 funding periods, I think we've actually committed $108,000. And we have, I think, $41,000 remaining in the account, and we still have one more funding round out of the fiscal year 2023 allocation. So this is just really a request to continue to fund the program at the previous level and to allocate in fiscal 2024 an additional $50,000 for that purpose.
I would probably like to absorb this, but I guess we will move on for tonight and we may come back to it if we have time. The next item on the agenda, we need a
can I
vote.
just mention
So
something?
discussion related to the vote for allocating an additional $50,000 to the small grant repair program.
So move.
And this is actually a request for this money.
Right.
Right,
So
second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? It is unanimous.
So just to tag into what Katie said, we're hoping that the board would have a maybe policy kind of meeting in the January, February timeframe. We could talk about the policy levels for these. Does that make sense?
And I guess I would be interested in hearing at that time if you've had people who have presented who have not met the policy requirement. All right, the next item on the agenda is the home consortium updates, the fair housing testing and parking study. There was a fairly lengthy report in here, but Karen, are you the person to provide an update, please?
Yeah, I'll be brief. The Home Consortium issued an RFP last year for an entity to coordinate fair housing testing across all the participating jurisdictions. And we didn't receive a response, the kind of usual suspect. The Suffolk University Law Center had just taken a major statewide project and couldn't respond. The Home Consortium reissued the RFP. This time Suffolk University Law Center responded, viewed the response, and we held an interview with the representatives, and the consortium has basically accepted their proposal. It is for somewhat over $300,000. The consortium had already set aside $100,000 towards the project. It turns out that one of the projects, that development projects that had received several commitments of home funding in the past, basically couldn't move forward, and the funding is therefore going to be returned to the Home Consortium, and members voted to actually take some of that money towards the funding of the fair housing testing, which leaves like a $33,000 gap that's going to be covered by the various communities admin, a small amount of the admin for next year's home allocation. It looks like all communities will get 10 tests over a period of 2 years. And that's actually a very nice thing for Needham, since we're getting the same number of tests as the cities are. So that is actually moving ahead. On the parking study, we had expected that the MAPC, who's kind of coordinating, pulling all the data together, was going to have a report available by the end of November. They're now saying the end of January, and they will be coming to the consortium's February meeting to present their report.
Yeah, Madam Chair, can somebody remind me of the details of the parking study? I think it was for residential, like multi-unit residential units, or am I remembering that correctly? About how much overnight parking there needs to be or something like that?
Multifamily rental developments.
So the goal was to do, so we had DPW staff go and do overnight counts, give that data back to MAPC to crunch, but the goal is to see how many spaces are actually used relative to the supply there, to see if there's a right size for how many parking spots you require at multifamily developments. The thinking that parking lots right now might be oversized, but we want the data to see if they're.
And is this in all different settings throughout this consortium, like suburbs versus, well,
All of those.
but we'll get
suburbs
the data
versus
back for
suburbs.
Needham.
We'll get the data back from
Specific
Needham,
to us.
but I believe, Karen, that it was a voluntary basis and communities opted into whether they wanted to participate. So. Karen, for the parking study, did other communities opt into that?
I believe all communities, it was across all communities. I think there were 2 communities that didn't follow through, but I could be mistaken. I thought that was my understanding, but it was across all communities.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Karen, just on the testing scope, and I know, for example, landlords get called sometimes and it's a test and it might say, if you take section 8 applicants, and of course you have to say yes. I'm just wondering kind of the scope, are they going to follow through on a purchase and they go and they look at the house? Is it rental? What exactly is the test?
Well, the tests are probably going to involve, the rental, as mostly, rental properties
Okay.
and real estate agents too, for the most part. That's kind of the focus.
And they would go and contact and, maybe look at the place and act like they were interested and see if they were kind of treated like other potential applicants. Is that the?
Yeah, the tests, they have 2, a control and then the actual
I
test.
see. They sent 2
So,
different.
and they're,
Okay.
similar, and they're going to see
Yes.
if there's just discrimination within that.
Thank you.
And I think Karen indicated we'll get 10 a year, which is more than we've been
No.
able to, right?
10 over 2 years.
10 over 2 years, okay.
For our $760.
It's still a good deal.
Yeah, real good is your Brookline.
Yeah.
You have a different time.
So this vote was already taken, right? December 1st. This is done. So the group has already met. I'm presuming the December 1st meeting took place, Karen?
Yes.
It was referred to in the document. So this is just an update. We don't have to do anything. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions related to this particular update?
Maybe just one clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, and Karen, but we get a small amount of funding from the home consortium. It's in the couple of thousand range.
Grant free.
So this is a deduct, so it's not like we have to even give them money, they'll just deduct it from our.
Okay. Item 6 was the status of the housing plan working group.
Lee, do you want to start this one? You're muted.
I think you all know that the Housing Plan Working Group held a community meeting to present the draft housing plan, which includes, the strategies moving forward. It was well attended, and we received a lot of input on the draft document. The plan is for the committee to actually meet this week and to consider the comments that it received at the broad community meeting, as well as comments it's received in writing, to review the draft plan in that context and to determine any modifications or adjustments the working group wants to make to that document. I anticipate that conversation will happen Thursday, and that there'll be probably a further revision of that plan that will go back to the committee, I think, just for one quick meeting to close out the process and the project, and to have them codify and approve the final housing plan. So the goal and the plan is to actually have it done by the end of the fiscal year. We had originally anticipated that we would just have the meeting that we have scheduled for Thursday, but I think there are enough open issues there that need the committee to weigh in on. And we just want to make sure that everybody sees the final plan in the end and they're okay with its recommendations and the way it's drafted, which is why we've now rolled into one additional quick meeting after the plan is modified to incorporate the changes people want to make Thursday of this week.
Lee, you indicated that the goal was to have the plan done by the end of the fiscal year.
No,
Do you
this
mean
year.
Calendar?
I'm sorry, if I said
Calendar.
fiscal, I did not mean fiscal. I meant this year. I mean to have it done in December.
Okay, that's good. So my next question to you is, are you anticipating that some of these might be taken up by the planning board for May town meeting or not?
The planning board, there is some low hanging fruit that the planning board is considering taking up. One item in particular is looking at the accessory apartment bylaw and expanding it. So they are considering, I think, moving forward on that one, that item in particular.
Okay.
In your packets is the draft implementation roadmap from the plan. So I think our thought for the group was, to Kate's point, if we schedule a meeting in January, February, where this group can really dig into the things that are marked as being led or supported by the trust, then we could have time to actually digest this document, but then also talk about what implementation might look like, or where to go from here.
If I could add one more thing too, I just got notice that MAPC is doing technical consulting work, and they're really wanting to focus on diversity efforts. And so there's a couple in here that maybe would be a natural for that kind of study. They usually provide the consultants as opposed to having us have to get a consultant and manage it. So that might be something that we can explore. I have the paperwork on that, Katie.
Any other questions related to the housing plan working group?
Sure, Madam Chair, just Lee, do you anticipate, I wasn't at that public hearing, but do you anticipate any kind of major changes or something that was glaring, or is it mostly tweaks that you're anticipating on Thursday? Or is it too soon? I know you have to go through the committee, but kind of something that.
I don't see any major changes. Karen, did you see any major changes?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Heidi, does that match your understanding or?
Yeah,
your
I
views?
just, I felt that during most of the meetings, there was a lot of talk about expanding the mission of the Affordable Housing Trust. In addition to which, at the public meeting, the League of Women Voters announced that they would be launching a study of the Affordable Housing Trust and its mission and whether or not it should be expanded. So I think if we're going to meet, when we meet, I don't think that the League study will be available anytime soon. I mean, they have a process that they follow. But I do think it bears looking at, because if I feel that a lot of what's in the housing plan isn't really assigned for implementation. And a lot of folks on this committee felt that it should be assigned to this body for implementation. So I think it's something
For
we want to,
implementation?
well, for some
Accountability piece of that.
implementation, a lot of monitoring. So I think we just want to sort of consider what might be down the road. A lot of it is the future strategies, not the immediate stuff, but I think it's something that we want to just talk about,
Conversation.
whether or not
Interesting. Okay,
that is suitable.
okay. I was curious because there's actually not, in the current document, there's not any, there's these vague things about Affordable Housing Trust, but there weren't, I didn't find any specifics anywhere in the spoken narrative, in the written narrative. And that led me to wonder if our Affordable Housing Trust wasn't doing what an Affordable Housing Trust usually does. And from what I can tell, we are doing what an Affordable Housing Trust typically does.
Yeah, I think though that the issue was that there were some who wished to expand the mission of the Affordable Housing Trust so that we would be responsible for monitoring and perhaps some development of affordable housing and managing the process of developing affordable housing. And I have sort of maintained that, as far as I know, that is not currently the mission of the Affordable Housing Trust, and that if there was going to be a change to that, that's something we need to talk about, prepare for,
Yeah,
decide
absolutely.
on, I just think we should address it, because it did seem like the league's comments felt like this is an opportunity to expand the mission. And I just think we ought to be prepared.
And I think one of the things that was talked about is how, or could we implement or direct more resources to the trust in order to use or to put more, I think that's.
Yeah,
some of the
and I
things
think there
that
was a
were discussed.
discussion, I mean, Lee and Karen, you've been listening to it too. I mean, I think my feeling was that this, or there was a discussion about whether this belongs with the Affordable Housing Trust or maybe the planning board.
Yeah.
Or, and where did those things fall and where is their staff availability and all sorts of things. But I just think, it's gonna come up, whether it comes up specifically in this plan or if it's sparked by the league study or just by the fact that we're sort of doing a lot of talking about affordable housing. And it just seems like something that we should sort of
So I know Karen had her up. I mean, I think the idea that the monitoring would be part of this group is in keeping with what we're doing already, in my opinion. Right, so that would make sense. I think some of the rest of it about whether this group has responsibility for that within the town, I think is another discussion, and I think we should have it. But Karen?
Well, I just wanted to add that in the draft, there under capacity building, there is a strategy on boosting kind of local and local support and regional collaboration. And in there is language regarding the Affordable Housing Trust and a kind of a revisiting of its mission, potentially with an expanded scope. And a review of membership, et cetera. There is a great deal of interest in augmenting the Affordable Housing Trust. And so it's, I think it's been suggested that we have another meeting early in the year to specifically discuss some of the recommendations out of the Housing Plan Working Group.
Gotcha. Just a couple, so many of these, when you look at it, zoning. So I think the planning board, that's really where it belongs, or a group under there. I just a comment, and as far as ideas, and I think they're terrific ideas, but I just want to keep in mind there's a cost to everything. So we talk about, energy efficiency, which is wonderful. We all agree on that, or we talk about tear down activity and controlling that. And then we're saying that on one hand, but then in the other, we need more affordable housing and develop to subsidize some of this housing by, offering them at a certain price. I just want to make sure that we strike that balance, because if you start making cost of construction high or too high, or saying, okay, you can build this, but you have to do all this stuff around it, it's really going to make it cost prohibitive. So that's just kind of a blanket overall thought when you look at some of these ideas. And as we implement it, we have to make sure we balance those ideas. Overall, I look forward to seeing the final thing. So thank you, Lee, Karen, and Marcus and Heidi.
And a lot of work from a lot of people, and there's certainly a lot of work
still to come
Very much so.
from various groups.
A lot of collaboration. That's what it's gonna take, and patience.
Okay, one of the components of that is the DHCD MBTA communities. And Katie, is that you?
Yeah, I can start this off. Just a quick update of kind of where we are in this process. So our next step is to achieve compliance for 2023, which really is just to submit an action plan to DHCD. To give you a sense of what's in that action plan, it really is like, who's the point of contact? What's your timeline? Like, what town meeting are you shooting for? And what's kind of the steps between now and then? And it does ask kind of in terms of kind of the content choices, it really is asking what's the starting place that you're coming from? Do you think you have a zoning district ready to go? Do you think you're gonna have to make tweaks to some? Karen Lee and I are going to draft our response that we want to send to DHCD, but I think the housing plan zoning subcommittee really did come up with a starting place. There's no commitment that we end there, but I think in terms of doing this compliance update to DHCD, it makes sense to submit that as our starting point. So that's due January 31st. And it'll really lay out the roadmap for our intention is May 2024 town meeting, so we'll be kind of backing out the timeline from then. Karen and Lee, anything else to add on that?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. It's a pretty easy form that DHCD has, basically broken up into the four components that Katie just described.
Katie, do you want to talk about the housing authority issue?
Yes, thank you. So I think yesterday it was in the Globe, there was an article about how some housing authorities had gotten money withheld from DHCD for not complying this year, which compliance this year was really like, who is your point of contact? That was the compliance form. So, some communities, I think it just got lost in the shuffle. But so the article kind of unearthed that we know from the legislation that there were 3 buckets of money identified as what would be on kind of the hook if a community didn't comply. It was Mass Works grants, housing choice grants, and then this local capital projects fund. In our research to date, we could not figure out what that local capital projects fund was or where the money went. And so up until this point, every time I've presented to the select board, I've said, we don't think this is material for Needham. If the Globe is right, the state actually uses that fund in part to fund their allocations to housing authorities. It's a formula funding for capital subsidies, basically, to housing authorities. So we were emailing with Steve Merritt, the interim executive director at NHA today. He said NHA gets about $250,000 a year from that formula program. Again, if the Globe reporting is correct, what DHCD held back was 10% of that, so it's $25,000. Now, obviously, the housing authority needs every penny it can get. So, it's just now I think we have a fuller view of what kind of the financial implications of non-compliance would be.
And I think in a couple of places I've seen them just say that it is possible that in the future, other funds could be dependent on compliance, the unspecified.
Yes, that is in the final DHCD guidelines for compliance. There's only 3 sources of money listed in the statute, but DHCD said that they could make discretionary funds kind of added to that list moving forward.
But it would still be discretionary funds within DHCD's purview, right? They can't take away funds from some other agency, I presume.
Don't know.
We're not gonna say yes to that.
I will leave that
Okay.
to the next administration and they can give us guidance.
You wouldn't think that they would penalize the housing authority for a town based on.
Right.
So the 10% was taken.
Sure
Sorry,
is.
I think
Not
we
really.
had- Okay, that's.
No,
what I
not
thought.
really.
In some
Okay,
towns,
all right.
Waltham, in some
Waltham.
towns,
It was
Waltham,
Waltham.
and it
It
was
was
unit.
Halifax.
And so,
Yeah.
I think
They don't
like
suck
Waltham, the reporting was that they lost $300,000 because their subsidy presumably is $3 million, right? So 10% is a big number.
Wow.
So it just,
It's
enforcement
huge.
is being taken seriously.
Yeah.
And-
We're doing our part. And-
We filed it.
Yeah.
And we're
We will not
ready
miss
to
the
file
January
next year.
31st deadline.
Yeah.
I promise.
Okay,
anything else related to this MBTA communities? All right, do we need to set a date now for
Yes.
January, February? We need calendars, okay?
We're looking to do another 5
Do you
o'clock
have
before
any-
select board.
No,
Oh, okay.
the hope would be not, because we're often rushing, frankly.
Oh, I
Yes,
see what
we
you're
are.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
We still have time.
Sorry, if you want to go back to what you were, so.
So, do you have some nights that you want to propose, Kate?
I was holding for those nights for the other meeting that we have to do.
Right.
I think early February at this point.
Well, February.
I'm busy on the 14th.
Yeah, we're all
How
here.
romantic.
We get to do it again.
We have FinCom on the 1st, Wednesday the 1st. You thinking we're FinCom's all those Wednesday nights or?
Well, the FinCom, I know that, is that our budget hearing on the first?
Yes.
So maybe the 8th?
8th?
Do the 8th.
Would it be 5? I commute on Wednesdays and could probably be back by 5:30. I guess I could leave early.
Oh,
5 is
no,
better,
that's
but-
five or- Whatever works for you.
Okay.
I know.
Somebody's playing somebody at something probably, right? So
Nah, I'm
6
trying to
o'clock
figure
better
out-
for
Yeah,
you?
I'm trying to take a look now. My
Yeah.
internet's not connected. Oh, there we go.
You guys online? We're looking at Wednesday, February 8th.
It's fine for me.
What time
Yep.
is it?
We think maybe 6.
Yes.
Yeah, that should be perfect.
All right, 6 PM, starting at 6.
Okay.
Oh, January 3rd.
I do. All right, so we will meet that night to discuss the options from the housing plan working group and understand.
Maybe a couple other policy issues that will.
With the small
The
repair
small
program as
repair.
well, yeah.
Maybe.
And there may be some more related to the MBTA communities at that meeting as well.
We'd have final.
Yeah, we can, I don't anticipate any right now, but we.
Okay.
We could talk about the arms length transaction.
Yeah, I just think it's.
And something else to talk about, I know the housing working group did, but the question about local preference. I know we want to study whether it has a different impact based on race, but actually just talking about it in general. might be good.
I was gonna say, we can, I'm thinking, and my board of trustees, right, we have something where we talk about specifically looking for people who are 3-fers, right? So to some extent, it strikes me that this local preference issue is similar, where you might give people points for a variety of criteria that are in fact all valued and important by the town or to the town, but we can talk about it at some point about how we think about that. Okay.
And then May 30th is our target date for a regular meeting.
So should we put May 30th also on our calendar now? And is that 5 PM night?
Nope, that is the 5th Tuesday, so that could be,
So that can be a 6 PM night?
it could be if it's helpful, sure.
Love those meetings in May when it's beautiful outside.
Then 5 o'clock always good.
I will be in DC for our
You will be
senior-
where?
DC for our 8th grade trip.
Same thing
Oh,
happened.
yeah.
I know, same thing happened, yeah.
We could try for it.
Oh, great. Hey, it was
You
something
were
last
saying.
year.
You were saying, I'll never mind.
All right, so where were you thinking, May what?
Can we do it the first week in June?
The 5th.
Well, the 6th?
The
Can we do
6th?
that?
I won't be here, but that's,
You won't.
that's, I have to drive to Houston.
Oof.
You get to drive.
I get
Yeah,
to
yeah,
say
Look
you.
at that. Look at that.
Yes,
Let's reimagine our.
my daughter is moving to
Girlfriend
Houston and
said.
I get to drive her. Yes, I don't want to talk about,
Talk about Bruno.
I don't want to talk about.
Right,
I don't want to talk about moving, children
All right.
move.
So what date are we proposing?
5th or 6th.
6th.
I can call
5th or 6th? Wait, but you're not here.
it. You're not gonna I'd rather be here, make sure I'm here in the February meeting.
Right, 5th or 6th, do people have a preference?
Six is good for me. Fifth
The
is
sixth.
good one.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
All right,
The 6th, I have a planning board meeting. So what time are the 6th?
All
what
right.
do you have
So
on the
let's do
5th?
the fifth.
Just another-
Planning board meeting.
I can do that.
All
Oh,
right,
what time? Yeah, okay.
5 PM or 6 PM?
Five.
Is that doable for everybody? 5 PM?
Five at five.
Yeah,
five on the
probably.
fifth?
5,
I
6,
have-
5.
sorry,
We're five,
June
five.
5th.
Four,
I have a
six, five.
diversity that can include a task force meeting. From 6 to 7:30.
You have a school meeting from, okay, so we can't do it the 5th.
The 8th? Or what's this, the 7th is the 7th is the, not the 8th.
7th would be better, 8th, I think.
8th is, we don't meet on Thursday. The rule.
All right, the 7th,
Otherwise,
we're
we'd
now
be 4
looking
nights.
at Wednesday, the 7th,
Fine.
at 6,
Wide open.
at 6 PM or 5 PM? Can you do,
Yep.
could you do either?
I
You
could do, we'll plan, I think sports. are done there. So I'm just thinking about my baseball schedule.
we
6,
better at
yeah,
6?
6 would be better, yes.
All right, so we'll do it at 6, June 7th,
It's gonna be June.
2023.
And we're having conflicts.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, that's, I'm so impressed. My
Baseball,
calendar
you
is
said
just.
baseball. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
baseball.
Nothing.
All right,
6, 7, and 6, okay.
both of them are in my calendar, locked down. All right, is there any further business?
We adjourn, Madam Chair.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all.
I don't know if you need.